This presentation is supported by our regional water supplier, Tarrant Regional Water District. TRWD maintains 4 area lakes and pipelines needed to provide surface water to local water treatment plants so they can clean it to meet drinking water standards for our communities. They also work with many cities in Tarrant County, such as Fort Worth, Arlington, and Mansfield, to provide water conservation programs for the community. Conservation is an important water supply strategy to help meet the needs of a growing population. There are currently 2.3 million people in Tarrant County, and this is expected to double over the next 50 years. This is why TRWD supports many programs that help save water through outdoor watering and gardening education. At SaveTarrantWater.com, you can sign up for free weekly watering advice custom to your location. If you are a resident of Tarrant County, you can sign up for a free sprinkler system checkup where a licensed irrigator comes to your home and provides a comprehensive evaluation of your system with recommendations to reduce water waste. There is also an event calendar where you can find important information about future classes and workshops. TRWD also partners with organizations like Texas A&M AgriLife Extension Service and the Tarrant County Master Gardeners to provide educational programs just like this one. Be sure to check out SaveTarrantWater.com and sign up for their free services.
Yeah, well, welcome. You'll notice there's a little bit of a change in the title in that I've included the term foodscaping, and we'll go through that one in the next couple slides. One of the things I have to remember to say up front is a disclaimer. Just remember, anytime you want to take on herbs or flowers or vegetables or anything else like that to affect your personal health, please make sure you check with your primary care provider. You know, for people like me that are on cardiac meds, I always have to check with not only the primary care provider, but my cardiologist. Otherwise, they get a little persnickety when I go visit them the next time, if you get the drift. So things we're going to talk about tonight, types of plants you can use in edible landscaping, how to create different types of edible gardens, and how to design and meet what you think are very pleasing to you and your family, and even your community. And then last but not least, how to care for and harvest your garden. The last thing you want to do is put all this time and effort into growing a very nice crop of edible flowers or herbs or even fruits and vegetables and then not be able to eat them. Okay. Before we get started on the regular presentation, I'd like to mention I was standing in the pharmacy this week and I noticed on the magazine rack standing right conveniently very close to us as we're waiting, you know that you've seen those. And Texas Gardener was there. And this is one of the magazines I subscribe to on a regular basis. And as we're talking about edible landscaping, they had a number of good articles in this month's edition. And it's listed on the resources as one of those that you might want to take a look at because the articles are relating to Texas, not to other states. The other one that I've seen before, but I don't subscribe to, and you guys may, is one called Garden Gates. They had a number of very pertinent articles relating to our topic tonight about best container designs, simple staking solutions, how to grow in a clay soil. You know, a lot of good articles, and many of them are written by master gardeners in other states, just to get us going here. Okay. So what is foodscaping, and why are we using it along with the term edible landscaping? If you look back to the University of Florida, they did a great definition of foodscaping and why it's important now. And it boils down to, it's a design concept, so it's just terms, where edibles are intentionally added to what you want to put with your ornamentals to form your garden that you want everybody to see. The result for most of us is a stunning bed that we really appreciate looking at, as well as harvesting, whether it be fruits, vegetable, herbs, you know, etc. there. And it's a practice of the perfect marriage of both form and function. Okay. And we'll talk a little bit more about it as we go through here. One of the best things about foodscaping that I enjoy is I watched a video called Growing a Greener World, where Bree author, and we'll mention her in the next couple of slides too, she wrote a book called Edible Landscapes in Texas. And she talks about how she got it going with the HOA and how just introducing small tidbits of edibles in the landscape got it into the HOA and got everything going there. And she mentioned a lettuce border along a bed, putting in kale in with coleus, and again, as you're a little bit more comfortable mixing in those edibles, she was putting sunflowers and corn as a backdrop for zinnias. Can you guys imagine the bright pops of color as she was doing those kinds of things? One of the best things about it, though, is when the grandkids or great grandkids come in. I have Sophie, who's 8. She's a great granddaughter, and she loves to go out because she loves salads. She's like, Gigi, can I go pick up my lunch? So she'll go out and she's really picky on what color lettuce she wants to eat today, or what color tomato she wants, or if she wants to pick up anything else out there to put on her salad for the day. And she'll actually bring it in, help me wash it, and then I get to cut it up for her. So the benefits are obvious, right? Time spent outdoors, and the nutrition aspect, and much, much more. Okay. And there's a master gardener down in Harris County, I believe it is, yes, Terry Simon, who coined the phrase edimental, Edimental. And again, we're looking at a fusion of edible and ornamental. Any plant that you think of that's edible and attractive, that's what we're looking for, beauty and nourishment in the same place, And of course, a lot of kids that, I've raised and grandkids and things like that, love it when we make a pizza garden. And again, it's very practical, and yet we add some function as well as form in there for us. Okay. And the episode I was talking about earlier about Foodscape and, the evolution, the revolution that's going on, about more and more households today introducing edibles. And again, whether it's fruits, nuts, vegetables, herbs, any type of garden you want like that, it's coming on board. It has been for quite a few years. There's a couple of books out there in regards to foodscaping and edible landscape. And Bree Author is one of those. And she actually writes the one about Texas here. And this is where I'd like to mention a magazine that I didn't bring up before called Mother Earth News. They've had several articles in there recently about the health benefits of what you would call a weed and others might call something essential. For instance, dandelion root. We've all heard the song about dandelion tea. Well, dandelions are actually pretty good for anti-inflammatory or prebiotic for your gut, if you've got GI disturbances going on. Even red clover, one of those cover crops I use, it has a portion of it that helps reduce severity of menopause symptoms. Boy, do I wish I'd known about that several years ago. There's all kinds of opportunities here as we go through working with more edibles in our regular landscape and putting them out there, not just stuck in the backyard, but for where everybody else can see it. And I hope some of you have gone to see at Botanic Gardens. We've had a forager, an Eric Knight, who's been presenting workshops on foraging. And he actually takes the class out into the Botanic Gardens and shows people how there's edibles interspersed in between a lot of the native plants and trees and shrubs. And then they talk about how to use them, how to recognize safe ones versus dangerous ones, etc. So you might want to look for him in the future. Okay. And I couldn't help but bring up another source of information for us, the YouTube channels that the Aggie Horticulture put on a regular basis. And this is one of my favorite presenters, Dr. Larry Stein. And he's talking about trees and getting them settled in. But I think once a week or every other week, nowadays, hopefully to get back on a regular schedule, they bring up topics, that are pertinent to us as gardeners in Texas. And he's a pretty good speaker. And some of the other benefits that we haven't already mentioned, or maybe a repeat here, the taste, nutrition. Nothing tastes better than a juicy tomato off your vine first thing before you get started. And then food security. I'm pretty comfortable knowing what pesticides or herbicides, hopefully none, I've used around my garden area. And it certainly reduces food costs if you've ever priced out, vegetables in the middle of winter. Convenience. I don't have to get in the car and drive to the grocery store. And we have a lot of fun when the grandkids and the great-grandkids come over, and hopefully it's sustainable in most of our yards. And there's numerous other benefits to growing in your own yard there. We have a couple acres, as we mentioned before, so we've got lots of opportunities. What you're seeing on the slide here, on the top right up there, is the area in the yard, the southeast corner, where we had an older home right before we built our new one. So I've just let nature take over back there. And we've got a little bit of a berm you can see in the background that helps divert water in that area so it's not pooling. And I threw some native seeds back there, and I've got numerous things coming up back there. Not only just sunflower seeds, black-eyed Susans, there's all kinds of other good things going on back there. Okay. And in the front, this is actually where a lot of my chickens from next door, and I'll show you those guys in a couple of other scenarios. But look at the aloe yucca here. Beauty. You can sit on the front porch of the side deck and just watch nature as all the visitors, the birds come and visit here and there. So you can't get more mentally relaxed than watching nature take action there. The type of plants, and these we're going to be looking at just briefly as we go through the presentation, because otherwise, I know Hill County College down here offers all kinds of semester-long courses in these different areas every year. Okay, so we'll show you some examples, as well as some other websites for you. This is my favorite part, along with native plants. I do a lot with herbs, different variety of them. I cook with them. I do herbal teas with them. I do aromatherapy with them. And my goal in life is to grow as many as I can without having to purchase things. And I'm doing pretty well. And one of the things you're going to notice in the resources is Daniel Cunningham and Dottie Woodson, along with Patrick Dickinson and Clint Wolf, are authors of the Foodscaping, the Edible Landscape that Texas A&M AgriLife puts out. Okay, I was pleased the other day when I went to a workshop at Fort Worth Botanic Gardens, and who was the presenter? Daniel Cunningham, an ex-agent who's now with the nursery, Rooted In. Thoroughly loved the presentation. There was a lot of interaction with the audience, but you never know who you're running into sometimes. Okay. And what's nice about a lot of these herbs are, if you have needs in your garden, and that's all part of garden design. If you've got shady areas, there are certain ones that love the cool weather as well as, the shade, like lavage, really like shady, those kind of things. If you've need something in the background like that's very tall, lemongrass, or even pineapple sage, which I have in a couple of areas in my garden there. But think about what you need and how you're going to use it. My rosemary that I grow in my garden, I've got a couple places it loves to grow. One's in the back corner, full sun. It's got black raspberry fruit growing around it, and it loves that corner. It's growing out of an old wicker tea box that we used to use for like picnics. The second place in the area that loves to grow is up front in the last in-ground garden bed that I'm actually using. And I have rosemary, thyme, and lavender. And then I have a row of lettuce, tomatoes, spicy peppers, and then bell peppers. It loves that back corner. And I like it too, because when I go in there to harvest different plants, I can smell the rosemary and the lavender and the thyme. Makes for a good morning that way. So again, look at what the sun is like, what the shade is like, the location. Is it up on a hill? Is it down? All those kinds of things go in your decision on what type of herb you'd like to plant in that part of your garden. I wrote a little bit up on basil over on your right-hand side there, just the different ways you can use it. And most of you probably all will know that one. The new part is probably under the medicinal area on the bottom. And one of the authors that I love to read is Rosemary Gladstar. She's been around for a few decades. And she's got a nice little basil tea for a good headache or a de-stressor that relaxes me every time. And it's combining a basil leaf, a lemon balm leaf, chamomile, and/or lavender flower. And then I use a little sweetness when I'm brewing it, and I put a little bit of ice in there. I've got some honey put over my ice, and it really makes it taste just right with that little bit of sweetness on there. But again, you got to learn where the basil likes to grow in your garden. It may be indoors, it may be out, depending on your sun and how warm and cool it is. Okay, and you've got to harvest it on a regular basis in order to keep it from growing to seed. This is from Melissa K. Norris, who's into homesteading, and she does a lot with herbs in the garden. And this is one of her examples of how she's got a side garden set up. It's not a small one. It's a 9 by 4 foot. And what's nice here is she's got a combination of container plants along with in-ground planting. And it kind of makes sense because everybody knows if you leave peppermint or regular mint or spearmint or any of those families out in the ground, they're going to do what? They're going to take over your whole garden. And I've got proof of that up there where my old building used to be. Once they got the building out of the way, that mint popped right back. And that's now taking over a certain portion of that dreaded area up there. And it's okay because there's nothing else growing up there. But look on her diagram. The rosemary and the peppermint are all in a big container on the right side. On the other side to offset it are things like sage and thyme. Again, all those need deep and a little bit of containing. Okay, you've got smaller containers where she's recommending ginger root on one side, and then she recommends oregano on the other. Again, they don't have to be as deep as the other guys. They can handle the shallow containers. And you want to pay attention to that on the packets when you're gathering the seeds or the transplants where you're putting the seedlings in, just to make sure you put them in the right container, the right size. And then in the ground, you have things like echinacea. I love that. I've got it scattered throughout the yard over here. It grows pretty well and comes back every year. Can't say that I know about marshmallow. I do holy basil, tulsi. Last year I had it growing up on my front deck, all the growing season there, and it did quite well up there. And then you've got things like feverfew. Very rarely, I think I had maybe 1 or 2 places there last year. But yarrow, if I can keep people from mowing it down thinking it's a weed, it grows quite well in my garden there. Okay. So just a suggestion on how she sets up her garden. And one of the things that she pays attention to, as we all should, is the size of her plants and how far apart they have to be. Do you really want something that's going to get 3 foot tall in front of something that's only going to get 12 inches? It's going to kind of shadow it out. And that could be a problem there. Teas, there's a wide variety of those that we get into. And I've got a tea bar, and then I have a tea cabinet with herbs in it that I use a lot with my herbal teas. And this is my favorite tea mug up here. It's got a little straining basket up here. And this is one of my newest blends down here. But echinacea is one of my favorite things. Lavender. I love lavender at nighttime with a little bit of mint and a little bit of honey. But that's very relaxing and helps you go to sleep. A little bit of yarrow is always good if you've got anti-inflammatory issues going on, or maybe a little bit of GI discomfort. It helps really good there. But everything's for a little bit different. If you've got, like I said, a headache, we mentioned that on the last slide, but lavender is pretty good at de-stressing you, relaxing you. I use a lot of chamomile some nights before I go to bed. That kind of helps out. Even menopause is handled with things like red clover, those kind of things. And mint is always good for your stomach. Lemon and lime, I've got a dwarf Meyer lemon tree, a dwarf Meyer lime tree. And I'm so glad to have a greenhouse this year because I'm tired of lugging it in and out of my house every spring and every fall because it can't handle the cold around here. So there's all kinds of good things and bad things about carrying this. The elder, I grew this last year in a grow bag. It took off like crazy, but it's been real persnickety this spring. I'm waiting to see if it's going to come back here. So we'll see how that goes with it. Okay. But I actually have a herbal inventory list on my bookcase that I keep track of how low I'm getting on certain herbs and do I need to make sure I have another plant going on to replace the ones I'm using now. You can see how I'm a little fanatic about them, right? But I enjoy my herbal tea. It gives me something to do, different blends for different occasions. Typical tea blends. I got these out of a book from Jennifer Brown. Okay. In case I didn't mention it, this is the one about foraging Texas. This is Eric Knight's blend, his book. Very good information on it. And this is the book on tea blends. There's hundreds of books out there for you. But what I like about this one is she gives me blends that I haven't noticed in a while, or she'll talk about mocktails, not cocktails, guys, mocktails. In fact, I think Brittany Meyer and Elena Woolsey did a mocktails class at Botanic Gardens earlier this year or late last fall. I think it was last fall, talking about those, and that was a great class to go to. But if you've got a little bit of a GI upset, you'll notice that we've got fennel seed, yarrow leaf, peppermint leaf. Got a little bit of nausea going on. Not quite feeling good. Bet you guys can guess which one that one's for. Ginger root and peppermint leaf. Okay. And a little bit just tired, you know. Rosemary does pretty good with that with ginseng. Headaches, lavender and peppermint. Very good for those. And again, just tiredness, maybe a little bit of lemon balm and elder and nettle. And again, what works for one person may not be the blend that works for you. So the fun for me is trying them out, growing them in the garden as much as I can, drying them or even fresh. I love to put mint leaves in ice cube trays. And that way I have this cold little piece of mint to kind of flavor up my next tea that I'm drinking. And I do that with several of the herbs. Okay. Helps out a lot. And then the vegetable group. I don't grow as many as a lot of other people do because there's only 2 people here. And when my husband travels, it's just me. So unless I want to fill up my freezer or give away a lot to my neighbors, which I have done, last year I traded a lot of vegetables for chicken eggs. I have a neighbor who liked kale and Swiss chard, the things I didn't like. I had a couple of neighbors who took a lot of those off my hands, and they were doing things for me, like giving me eggs. Okay. So again, showy annual vegetables, eggplant, kale, peppers, sweet potatoes, and there's all kinds of sweet potatoes. We'll talk about those more, whether it's ornamental sweet potatoes or actually the kind that you want to eat, and tomatoes. How many different tomatoes are there? There's must seem like hundreds of them. You can grow purple ones or red ones or orange ones or yellow ones or any of the above type that you like. I like big, juicy ones or the really small cherry tomatoes, depending on what I'm doing with them. A nice little salad. I like the little cherry ones. Sandwich or like a cheeseburger, I want to put tomatoes on. I want the big, juicy ones. And you can grow those different kinds. But Texas A&M has an Aggie horticultural planning guide, and the references on the resource page like that. And if you're looking for cool season crops versus warm season, we're planning for fall already. What seeds should we start getting going right now in order to plant them later on so that they can grow and be ready to produce in the fall before the winter hits? So again, read the package closely. And we'll talk about containers later on. And there's several vegetables that do great in small containers, hanging containers, and a wide variety of those different ones that we have. Okay. I mentioned before about purple kale. Talk about a pop of bright color in there. And sweet potato vines, the kind that's ornamental. Did you guys know that it was actually named a Texas superstar? According to the AgriLife Today newsletter about lawns and gardens back in 2021. Okay. And again, you have so many different shapes of leaves on the potato vines, whether it be 3-lobed or heart-shaped, deeply cut, like a Japanese maple. There's all kinds of different colors there. This is sweet potato vine, and you've got the purple and the yellow and the green, yellowish green and the green, all kinds of different flavors that we use a lot as spillers in planters. And this is from the garden a couple of days ago. I'm making salsa. So I'm taking all the tomatoes I have and some that I already have in the pantry, and then I have a variety of different peppers. And some are hotter than others. This is our first year of growing Hungarian peppers. I got it right. All week long, I've tried to call them Havana peppers, but they're Hungarian peppers. And my stepdaughter said they were really good and spicy. The warmer, the hotter, and the darker the pepper gets. So we're going to wait and see here. Okay. Perennial vegetables, again, I have garlic and onions and chives. I've grown. I don't like a lot of some of the others, but I like radishes. I go through streaks on that. So I'm learning, as I'm giving gifts, I have to learn how to cook things for them or find others that would like to do that. There's a lot of opportunities when you're looking for edibles that you can put into your landscape. What color, what size, is it drought, is it shady? You need all that information before you can get started. Okay. Texas trees, I bet you a lot of people have already been over to Texas A&M, the Forest Service group, and look at the trees of Texas. This is an example of my Mexican plum tree information. I have 2 of those. I went to a foraging class with Mr. Knight, and his wife did multiple recipes using the Mexican plums, the fruit of this tree. And what she said were a couple of key items when using it is make sure you get it before it drops on the ground. Okay. And she was using it in jelly and jam and in a couple of desserts like cookies, those kinds of things. And that's pretty nice. They tasted great to the tune of the fact that I went and got a couple of Mexican plum trees because we have a lot of acreage and not a whole lot of trees over here. Now, I have a variety of apples, not only the ones that I would acquired during the pruning class last year, but I actually went out and bought some here. And last year, out of all 4 trees, 3 produced. That was the first year here. I had about 30, 40 apples. And between my husband and some of the predators, I very rarely got to eat any of them. But they were nice and juicy, and hopefully this year they'll be even better. So we're looking forward to that. Okay. If you can't tell, there's a little challenge here about growing fruit and getting them in the house. I have a lot of people that like to eat them out in the garden, and I just try to ask them, please make sure you clean them because you never know what's been playing in that area there. But figs and peaches and plums, we're working on that. Like I said, I have a Mexican plum. I haven't tried to grow peaches here, and I'm not a big fan of figs, so probably not coming here. But look at the AgriLife Extension site to find out what variety is good for the part of Texas that you live in. It makes a big difference whether you're in alkaline soil, acid soil, as most of you probably know. I was visiting another Master Gardener's website. I'm going to apologize to Kim up front. I didn't get her pictures in here. But one of the nice things that I enjoyed looking through there, she doesn't have a formal garden per se, but she does have a combination of native plants, along with some vegetables, along with some fruits, along the driveways as you walk driving into a property. And one of the areas that I noticed light off because I kept seeing the pops of red were the strawberries that were used as ground cover along the driveway. They look very nice. Okay. Very pretty. Okay. One of the things that we use along the back fence is I've got some black raspberries growing back there. They're a little prickly, and that helps deter the local chickens from coming in that part of the fence. They're going to come moseying through and grabbing things along the way. I would like for them to stay out of certain areas, and that kind of helps discourage them over back in there too. Okay. Medicinal herbs, and again, please make sure you don't combine these with medications until you ask your physician. But there's a lot of good references on here. And one of the ones I like to mention is Rosemary Gladstar's Medicinal Herbs. There's all kinds of herb books you can get. Some are written by physicians, others are written by herbalists. And I'm going to give another plug for Botanic Gardens. They've started inviting a herbalist and a registered dietitian. Her name is Andrea Garcia. And she does, I think she's up to quarterly nowadays. And her next presentation is in August. And she'll be talking about basil, a couple of different varieties along with Tulsi, holy basil. And what she normally does in class is she not only talks about growing them in your garden, but she also talks about the multiple different ways of using them in different aspects, whether it be aromatherapy or like in culinary purposes or anything, a variety of things that she's used to. And then she tells you a little bit of the history. And it's good to know where a lot of these things come from that you're working with. And the other part that I really want to stress is make sure you look at that Texas invasive plant list. Because even though mullein is growing and some of it's good, there's a common variety that is on the invasive plant list. You don't want to be picking on that one. Okay. The Astrid Kear's aloe vera. I've had an aloe plant for probably 6 or 7 years or more. I've given away several pieces of it over the years. And what I typically do is when I have a scrape or a burn or something that itches real bad, believe me, I've used it a lot the last few weeks. I take some of the gel out of one of the limbs and squeeze it into a little bag and freeze it. So then when I take a small little bag out and use it on my skin that's itching like crazy, the combination between the cold as well as the aloe works really good for me. So I know it works pretty good. And I've had a number of the grandkids and the little ones in the neighborhood have actually used it with too. With the parents have asked me if I had something that would help them out. Okay. I love peppermint, even though it goes crazy in my yard. Um, there's a wide variety of mints. You've got chocolate mint, you've got peppermint, you've got spearmint, you've got this and that and the other kind of thing. Okay. And you do know, I think it was Laura Smith, or one of our agents that's done a number of participated in research on the different varieties of lavender. And we've got a few of those that in the yard that are growing well this year. Okay. Chamomiles around the yard, calendulas in my yard. It's my native plant growing. Lemon balm. I swear those pollinators just have fun with me. I now have a lemon balm plant growing in a container in front of my she shed that I didn't plant, which is nothing new because what, 3 feet, 4 foot from it is a bird feeder. So they leave me presents, coming and going there. Okay. And we've got yarrow and valerian throughout the yard, red clovers in the east berm on the east side of the house. So they're around here. Echinacea is a good one to grow in your yard. And Miss Gladstar talks about it in her book, Medicinal Herbs, about the antifungal, how it improves your immune response, the antibacterial properties, all these things. And if you're thinking about, are they research-based? And before I start using something on myself, okay, I don't make recommendations for others, just for myself. I'll look them up, the Federal Drug Administration or the NIH, just to get a clear concept of how can I use it and what's best and what to watch out for. Okay. And peppermint, believe it or not, we all know about the GI issues it helps with, abdominal pain, bloating. There's a wide variety of ways you can use it, as well as just putting it in your herbal tea. Does a great job for me. I love it that way. And I bet you guys were eating edible plants, edible flowers way before you even knew what they were, right? Okay. I started eating squash candy from a Mexican grocery store / restaurant back in the 1960s. Mi Tierra down in San Antonio was one of our favorite places to go when my dad was in a Pan American golf event. And we would go through San Antonio for different reasons, if not just to stop at that restaurant. It's one of the oldest ones in Texas. Yeah. And not to mention, who hasn't eaten stuffed squash with ricotta cheese in the middle of it? Fantastic. And I don't really even like the squash taste, but I love that one. It's pretty good there. Okay. One of the things that I think about borage, and I don't grow it in my yard, but I sample it every so often, is that has a taste like cucumber, to me anyway. Nasturtium, I can't say that word very well, but they taste a little spicy like peppers. Lavender is kind of if you could put a taste of flowery, it kind of tastes a little bit like that. It's just kind of sweet, bright taste to me. But in teas or in water, it's very good. And dianthus flowers. Okay, I went to a mocktail class, not the one that Brittany and Elena gave, but another one. And they were talking about using dianthus flowers, and they made it into a simple syrup. And then they put it in with vodka, and they had a sparkling little refreshing cold drink. Yeah, people were, no, they weren't. But it adds a bright touch of brightness to a drink that you wouldn't normally associate with that. Okay. And one of the nice ways that we don't think about using edible flowers, besides on cakes and things like that, making shortbread dough. And then you can sprinkle those edible flowers on the dough and then cut them up into little bars or biscuits or cookies, and cook them that way. And I tell you, the kids love them, those kind of things for you. And they're not very hard on them. They're good. But make sure that you remove stems and some of the leaves. You don't want to overabundance of it. Just put the edible part on there before you bake them. Getting on to a little different topic. creating different types. And we're going to go over a little bit of this. I'm going to show you some pictures of different ones. And I bet you guys could think of ones to add to this. If you got to think about it, maybe you've seen it in the neighborhood or you've even done it before. Okay, sure. Okay, so vertical gardens, you've got pallets, and I'll show you some examples of those. You've got stairs made out of containers. This is out of Mother Earth News back in February of last year. They actually had the how-tos on creating this vertical garden. And let's not forget the planters, the hanging containers. Tomatoes here and a little bit of lettuce here. Okay. And there's a wide variety of different vegetables that like hanging baskets. Okay. Thyme, basil, arugula, cucumbers even, depending on how you position them in there. Radishes, strawberries, the spinach, just to name a few for you there. Okay. Here are some more examples. Here's a whole wall that I found in one of the articles I was reading. These are different boards that they put on a fence, and then they put these little containers on it just to add a little variety. I swear that looks like a pig here and here. Every time I look at them, they look like little pigs. Adds a little humor to it. This type of use of a pallet was actually featured on Growing a Greener World. The family had a very, very small yard, and yet they wanted some herbs and maybe some lettuces for salads. And Mr. Lampel, Joe Gardner, showed them how to take a pallet like this, put some fabric on the back and a little bit of a firmer board, hung it up on the side of their house in the front, and then showed them how to plant these different little edible plants in it. And they could grow up very easily here. And don't forget the free space here on your balconies or on your, the fencing or on your patios, those kind of things. And this to me looks like they took drawers out of a Chester drawer and just took the drawers themselves and built them up like that. Okay. Texas A&M from Travis County actually has a PDF brochure if you're interested in how to build a vertical garden from a pallet like this one here. They've got the how-to instructions for you, and that's on the resource page too. But using these types of fences or dividers or trellises or, cattle fencing, you can reuse and recycle different components that a lot of people would throw away just to build containers for. And I bet some of you have actually seen the cinder blocks here over at Tarrant County College, the South Campus, outside the horticultural building. I accidentally roamed through their area last year, and some students were working on planting their plants. And then I came through a couple weeks later, and they had actually, plants growing up out of everything space you can think of in here, all over the center of the blocks and every little hole. And then I watched them when they were getting ready to harvest and get everything out. And they actually gave me a whole huge bag of different vegetables. And I get home and my husband's like, did they not want them, or were you really nice? I said, it's probably the case that they've already had a whole lot, and I came to the right time. This is out of the demonstration garden over in North Richland Hills, off of Davis Street. If you know where the fire station is, that's right across from there. And this is in the back section. And again, a good use of the cinder blocks. And ultimately, you can put plants in here if you want, all kinds in here. Use your creativity on here. They grow really good. And for those of us who can barely speak English some days, and certainly not German at times, Hugelkultur is a term used for those raised beds. And we have a couple of them in use here, and I'll show you a slide. But you're using products out of your yard. We had cut down a couple of trees and had all these bigger, huge branches. And we had some trunks. We had some smaller branches. We actually had some grass clippings that weren't weeds, which is hard to find in my yard. Okay. And then I had a little bit of topsoil we had brought in and some compost, all kinds of things to kind of make a very big mound. And you notice that part of it's underground like this too. And it helps with the improving the whole soil as everything's breaking down and decomposing. It's almost like your built-in compost pile here. But it's good on water conservation, low on maintenance. And what I did was my husband built, I helped him a little bit, but he did most of it. And then I got to plant native plants, i.e. throw some seeds. And I planted 3 or 4, maybe a little bit more plants, seedlings, transplants, but most of it was seeds that I threw on there and kind of kept watered. And here's what it looks like on my side yard. This was a pool of water a lot of times during the year because we're on the edge of a flood zone and parts of our yard filled with water quite easily. So again, we have bigger pieces of wood through here. We have smaller pieces through here. We bolted up a little bit more. And this is a picture a few months later of all the wildflowers going crazy. And it's a little bit different this year, and they have a different variety in it. But again, you can put seeds in there, put plants in there, and just let it go crazy. But it's doing two purposes. You know, it's good for the pollinators and the insects, and it's certainly good for diverting that water to another area. And that was my main goal, you know. So whether you can identify the black-eyed Susan or coreopsis or the blanket flowers, the lance leaves, Indian blankets, the cornflowers, all that kind of stuff are in there, you know, and they change as the season goes through. Okay. This picture over on this side is from Cheryl Whitehead, one of our master gardeners. And she has a raised metal container, and she's got the boji berries, the yarrow, feather grasses around here somewhere through there. Very nice. You can see the fencing or the edging around through here. You know, it's a bright pop of color in there. These are the ones that I put in like last week. I'm still working on them. You know, the greenhouse is a little bit new. This is my tea box. I've got two different sides here, a little bit of oregano down here, tarragon, and I'm throwing seeds in here. We've got peppermint growing in through here, okay, and a couple other little herbs. This little guy over here in the middle has milkweed in it, lemon balm, you know, a variety of other little guys in here. And then the one on there, this has Mexican espazote, another herb you can use in culinary. I've got a little bit of lemon balm, Aleppo peppers, a wide variety of little this and that of seeds I was growing in my bathroom that I hadn't planted yet. Okay. I've got a few little plants in here. It's hard to see, but there's a little bit of chives in there. And I've got a few more pots through here and a couple of guys down there. But ultimately, I'll have it all beautiful in a few months, just in time for the winter to hit. Here's a wide variety of stones that a landscaper has put together just to show the beauty, as you can see different flowers through here. And you can decide on how you want to do your different edibles as pops of color. Sweet potato vine, I love seeing that one. You know, kale are some of my favorite ones, ornamental peppers. There's a wide variety of those. Craig LaHoyer, who's the author of Epic Tomatoes, How to Select and Grow the Best Varieties of All Time, was on Growing a Greener World several months ago, and he was telling everybody he grows all of his tomatoes on his cement driveway. And one of the places he likes to use are bales of hay. And he gets great production out of there. You know, he amends as needed, but that's one of his primary sources, that with grow bags and other containers through there. This is one of my final goals on the area next to the greenhouse. I'm going to use cattle panel fencing to kind of do a smaller arch. I've got a couple metal raised beds that I'll be putting there. I want to do a little dramatic through there. So we'll see what comes of it, and I'll get some pictures and post out there for you. Okay, but they're right next to my new greenhouse. So containers, your imagination is the end on here. You can get as creative as you want, from something simple as baskets. I have a wicker basket that I have different plants growing on, and they love them. I have grow bags. I have wicking buckets. You know, that has a PVC pipe in the middle of it with holes and everything in the bottom that I use to put water in my big bucket that I'm growing like an elder shrub or tomatoes or different things in there. You know, you can do all kinds of opportunities through there. And again, whether you're hanging them or going up, going down, or going around, your ideas, there's not an end to them. And I'll show you some different ones as we go through here. Now, Cheryl also sent over some pictures of, this is her onions and snapdragons. And again, if you look through here, my husband took apart those raised beds and was throwing soil everywhere. And you can look through and you can see some little red onions through there. I've already harvested some through here, and I've got some more coming in. But I didn't plant them. They're all from the soil that come out of the one raised bed that we had. So I'll have some more to put up. This is my new greenhouse. It's a few weeks old. I had the electrical finished today, so water will be coming after that, and then we'll start growing more things in there. Right now I have a desert rose that's inside, and I'll have the lemon and the lime that are sitting out front here. Okay, and I have some of the raised beds that I'm already started through here. I've got a compost over in this area, and we'll pretty it up. Okay. This is something along the lines I would like to aspire to. We'll have to wait and see what comes out of that. But the whole idea is that I would like to 24/7, all year long, go around the garden bed, the greenhouse around and the gardens around there too. Okay. So designing in the last 10 minutes or so that we have left on here, we'll go through this rather swiftly because there's a lot of PDFs from the Texas A&M or Oklahoma State, those kind of things that show you explicitly how to design. And we'll go through there. Almost every state I looked at, about 5 or 6 of them, had their own versions of designing an edible landscape. I'm a naturalist, as you can see by the chickens that come and visit routinely every day. They're next to a cactus bed that has a lot of sunflowers. Mom and the chickadees love it because there's a bird feeder here. There's another one on the other side. And over here next to a tree is one with a little garden that they can also hide in. So when the big guys go, they all go rushing in here. And then she brings them out and then they go home. But there's a lot to do with the natural setting. I have a lot of sunflowers that are growing all over the place. I do kind of conform a little bit about making sure I don't put the wrong plant in the wrong shade or, the wrong plant in the sun, those kind of things. And then we've seen several examples of a structure, like the cement stones that were in a nice layered aspect through here. So again, it depends on what you like, not what I like for you, okay? This is all right off of the Foodscaping, the edible landscape brochure they've drawn out. I started that way about 4 years ago, drew out my yard where I wanted the native plant part to be, where we were thinking about putting the new house at, where the she shed's going, where the carport with the male shed back there, But what we were trying to pay attention to is right place right plant at the right place, looking at size, looking at light, looking at water needs. Right now I'm thinking in my head, I have 5 independent freestanding water faucets throughout the yard around the 2.5 acres. And we'll probably get a couple more set up before all's well there. And as you're thinking about your locations, don't forget your porch. The front porch can be a welcoming sight by putting nice plants up through there, okay? And who hasn't chuckled when you see this toilet? I have seen this around Dallas several times. They're not as fancy as this one. This is out of the Middle Tennessee State University, but I've certainly seen plain old white ones. I've seen them decorated with different colors. I've seen plants coming out of the back, the water tank, as well as the other part. I've seen all kinds of different things, but your imagination is the key. As you're using these objects here, these different types of edibles and plants and things, are you replacing plants in your current garden as they're wearing out, they're dying out? Or are you starting from scratch, removing the hardscape like Bermuda grass or St. Augustine and reinstalling, your edible landscaping through there? Okay. The cutest one I saw lately was I have to admit, was the 3-wheeled bicycle. And the basket in the back had all kinds of flowers on it. We have a lot of people using old wagons that people used to use with horses, okay? This is another picture from Cheryl along her front walkway. Look at the variety of colors and textures. And she's got yarrow and oregano and thyme and some other things going on through here. What I like about this is you don't have to bend over far stretches to kind of curb it under control. And then you have the hanging pots through here and along the inside of the patio up through here. It looks very nice, organized, and you've got a theme of colors going on through there, white and yellow with little pops of colors. And how many of you guessed that this is like a Home Depot barrel? It's got holes in the bottom and there's actually tomato plants growing out of it. It looks fantastic, doesn't it? I use a lot of those for watering my trees, my baby trees in the summertime, okay? Caring for and harvesting. And this is the key point when you want to pull together everything you've grown over the growing season. I mean, there are a lot of plants that we've been harvesting throughout the growing season that they go to seed if you don't harvest them routinely. But again, putting like plants together, whether it be similar watering. For instance, I don't want to put my Mexican buckeye next to something that needs a whole lot of water. They wouldn't work well. Fertilizer needs, My tomato plants need a little bit more than some of my native plants do, and my herbs do. And mulch is everybody's friend. And again, be careful with what type of mulch. There's a whole different lecture on that one. But Texas A&M AgriLife Extension has a fall vegetable guide that would be your friend. Because if you look at that, or you look at some of the other magazines I have around here that give schedules already, in some instances, we're already starting seeds for the fall, because it may take 4 to 6 weeks or longer to get the seeds growing to where you can think about putting them outside. And then it takes another 60 to 90, depending on the variety you have, before they're ready to harvest. So you can see where, if you look at that, you're looking 4 months, 5 months down the road before you get some fruit that you can take care of. So again, this is in your resource list in the back. And by all means, make sure you start with and get a soil test. I'm sending in a soil sample in the part of the yard where the old house used to be, because there was a house on there for over 25 years. I'm thinking there's a possibility the soil is a little bit different than the rest of the yard that we have out here, where there's been cows grazing for a lot of those 25 plus years, not the last 5 that I've had it, but before then. So it should be a little variety. And you've got people like Neil Sperry, if you're not a subscriber to his weekly newsletter, FYI, today's came out, with things to do this week and things to look forward to soon that we need to get ready for fall. Okay. And look for your succession planning. I've got a couple of little objects already and seeds saved for this fall to get them started. Okay. And as we're getting close to the end of the topics, some of the classics I wanted to bring up again, Rosalind Creasy wrote one of the original books on edible landscaping, and she was actually on this edition of Masters of the Edible Landscape that Growing a Greener World did back in 2016. Okay. And this will really date how old you are if you actually recognize who this gentleman is here. Okay. And most of us wouldn't. I knew him by face. I just didn't know his name, because I used to watch and still do, I have to admit that, a lot of cooking shows. And that is Graham Kerr. The last time, or at least when this show was written, he was living in Washington, the state of Washington, north of Seattle. And he was showing people how to grow vegetables and fruits and things like that, and then how to use them in the kitchen. Okay. And then Nathan, don't quote me, but I believe it's Chef Nathan Hale. He's very good. He takes whatever comes out of the garden and makes a great recipe out of it. And then this is Joe Lample, or some people know him as Joe Gardner, from Growing a Greener World. He's been a leading gardening expert for a number of years, but again, just a plug for different varieties of experts that you can look at here. The resources, I didn't give you all of them. I think I did my best to give you some of them. And there'll be a PDF version of just the resources coming out too when you get your YouTube. I mentioned several of the books that I alluded to: Medicinal Herbs, Guides to Medicinal Teas, The Healing Garden, Kitchen Garden, Landscaping with Edible Plants by Cheryl Beasley. I didn't put this one in the resource because it was right there. It was right close to it. I think Cheryl alludes to it in her book several times. Websites, of course, I have to go back to Texas A&M. And I've showed you YouTube videos. A lot of the AgriLife Extension agencies from multiple states use those. University of Florida, Growing a Greener World YouTube, the freebies that are on there. UConn is a great source. All those are great references for you. I tend to go to AgriLife resources before I go to anything else. Okay. Especially because we're now seeing more and more YouTubes and more videos. Oklahoma is pretty close to us too up there. And these are two magazines I was mentioning. And I've got a couple of these that I'm trying to figure out how to best use them besides strawberries, to see what kind of vegetables and fruits that I can grow out of here. Probably herbs, I think. Okay. This is another bunch of different types of flowers that we can grow just out of a wicker basket, talking about a different type of container through there. Okay. And this is a sign that we put on a greenhouse when it first got delivered. My corgi here, Mr. JJ, is the one who passed away a few weeks. So all we have left now is Molly, and she and I kind of rule the roost But if you have any questions afterwards that we're not handling in here, please feel free to send me an email. And a lot of us master gardeners pull duty on the help desk. Please give us a call, and we'll be glad to help you there too. This should be ingrained, it's like dial 911. It's called send an email, and let's see what we can do to help you out there. Okay. I think we're ready for question and answers. Did I get it right?
You did.
Yay!
And so far, I see 2 questions.
Yay! Y'all can help me out there.
First one, Brenda wants to know, is it just the petals of the flower that are edible?
No, on different ones, for instance, if you're looking at like echinacea, it's the leaves more than the stems. But you look at other flowers, again, that's why you go back and you check your resource like A&M. Some of the things I look at, think about strawberry flowers. Everybody likes the strawberries, right? But nobody thinks about the leaves as being partially edible. You think about lettuces, and everybody thinks that the leaves are the only thing that's edible. Carrots are another example. So again, everybody's a little bit different. And that's why you go back to the experts, because some of them are very, I'm not going to use the word toxic. I'm going to say very unsettling to your stomach if you eat the wrong part of the flower, if that makes sense.
Okay.
So each individual one's going to be a little bit different.
All right. Caitlin wants to know, do I need to dry the herbs before I can use them to make tea?
Not necessarily. And most of us, I use less on my dried than I would on my fresh. I always make sure my herbs are clean. They're not sopping or anything like that. But if I'm going to be using fresh herbs, like fresh echinacea, I'll use half of what I would on the dried, because dried is what? More potent. But this is where, as your own individual, and you're mixing and matching what you like, try it with a little bit more over here or a little bit less over here, and you'll find the flavor that you like. Okay.
Okay. Ed says, with this Texas heat, containers seem to dry out so quickly with the late summer temps. He's not a fan of hand watering. Any ideas on how he can get around that? Should he put them in the ground? Yeah.
Yeah. Actually, last year I was experimenting with a few of them. I'm too cheap to go out and buy Ola, O-L-L-A, those kind of stoneware that you put like upside down inside your container, and you fill it with water, and the water leaks out of the container, so to speak, the ceramics or the terracotta. I use a wicking bucket. It's a PVC pipe that I put holes in the bottom, and I stuck it inside of a coffee container that actually had holes in too. So when I filled up the PVC pipe from the top, as the soil needed it, once it got over the initial wetting that I did, as the plant and the soil needed the water, it pulled it out of the PVC pipe. And then during the summer, I got used to knowing what the tomato plant needed, if it was once a week or 3 times. When we were running around, 105 and plus, I was in there a lot because it was drawing it up so fast. But some of the other times in the summertime, it would take me 2 to 3 weeks before the water would be needed to be drawn out. So you've got that. A lot of people use Coke bottles, the 2-liter ones. They'll actually fill them up and turn them upside down. And again, as the soil needs the water, it'll pull it out of your water bottle, and you can actually see that happening. And there's a wide variety of different DIY projects like that you can use, because I don't like to water by hand either. Soaker hoses and sprinkler irrigation systems, when you get acres and acres, it's a little hard to do that.
Okay. Any tips for deciding which plants to go in your greenhouse and which ones to go outdoor in beds?
I'm learning. You're more of an expert, Dick, on that, aren't you?
No, I don't have a greenhouse.
We'll have to find there's a list of master gardeners that have taken the classes. I know, but I'm just learning. But the thing about it is you've got humidity to handle in the greenhouse. One of the first things my husband did, or we did as a group, is I put shade cloth on, because I check my temperatures. I have a log in there, so every day I'm out there 3 or 4 times to see what it's doing. The first few days, it was running 120 plus out there. And then we got the shade cloths and put them on, and now at least we're in the 90s, So that helps out a lot. And now I have electricity, which means I can do fans. So that's bringing it down a little bit, but I'm still going to end up having to do something in the summertime. My goal is to keep it in the 80s, not up to 100. And then I can keep some of those plants that like the warmth and they'll get enough sun, through the east side. My west side is a little bit dappled shade. So mine's going to be trial and error. My goal is to be able to grow lettuce and tomatoes year round. So check with me in a few months and I'll let you know how that's going.
All right. That's all I see here. But, if anyone has a question, they can raise their hand and we can unmute you and you can ask your questions.
And as most experienced master gardeners say, I'm not an expert at anything. I'm still learning every day. There's always something I can learn better. And my husband will say hallelujah from the next road over.
I have
We're
to
always learning.
I have to relearn every day.
And one of the things, I have a stepdaughter. She and her husband moved over from Arizona. Okay, they're coming from around Tucson, Arizona. They moved over to Cleburne. Can't remember how many phone calls I've already had. It does what in this time of year? I have to watch out for what this time of year? How come I can't grow this in my yard? I said, have you seen wet black clay in Arizona before? It's
I
a
see
different
someone raise their hand. I'm gonna
Okay.
unmute Samsu. You can unmute and ask your question, Samsung.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
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 Ah, there you are. Did you hear what I said a while ago?
No.
No.
Oh, okay. I wanted to tell you you did a fantastic job. I really enjoyed it. One of the reasons I tuned in this afternoon or this evening was because of the fact I have inherited quite a bit of acreage, and I'm trying to figure out, how I should proceed with some of it. And so what would you recommend on an acreage wise if I've got, let's just say I have about 8 acres. Would 1 acre be good to kind of start something on, or should I use more than that? I think
You need
I
to
think
get my
ultimately
husband's view.
do what?
Yeah, I said, you need to get my husband's view. I'm the type that would jump in and try to do all 2 acres at one time. And he's like, no, honey, let's start small. And I have to agree to him. It would have been totally overwhelming had I started with all those. So I started with a small area, and the grandkids would come over, come up. I have a 17-year-old that hops the train from Austin that comes up sometimes when we need heavy things lifted. But start with a small area. The first thing is, what's your soil like? Everybody's going to tell you, test your soil, right? And find out what you have to work with. Is it black clay?
It's sand.
Sand? Oh, Lordy. I would have no expertise in that one. What's interesting about it is our yard, our soil, because we're on the border, the edge of a flood zone, we have a particularly low phosphorus level, which most people around here don't. We also have a lower nitrogen and phosphorus, but, pretty good in everything else. Black clay is supposed to be really nutritious, and it is. So I just have to watch out for those 2 areas. And it is extremely alkaline over here. I've got a pH of 7.8. Wish me good luck on growing a lot of things, which is why we go to raised beds and grow bags and things like that. It's kind of hard unless you know exactly what will grow in that kind of a pH. And then let's mention no trees, little to no trees. We're replacing some of it. But if you've got trees, it helps a little bit too. Those leaves are gold with mulch.
Oh, good.
Objects there. But to answer your question, I would start small first. I would also get to know your local ag agents, especially if you have anybody in your location who would love to come and play with you, kind of things. But there's lots of opportunities to get in and get some hands-on experience too. If you're not experienced, and believe me, I was not, I found every free event I could go to before I became a master gardener. You know, I had over 300 hours the first year, and most of it was a lot of freebies. I love to learn because there's a lot of questions out there, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Sure is. Yep.
sure.
Well, thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Yeah, yeah. iNaturalist can be your friend. Let me just put a plug in there. If you don't know a lot of your plants, and I don't know a lot of my bugs, I take little pictures with iNaturalist, and that helps tremendously.
Okay. Never heard of that. I'll have to try
It's a
that out.
freebie, and it's a hand app on your phone.
Okay.
Works
Okay.
great.
And it's free. It's free.
Yeah,
it's free. I love
is
that.
good. Yeah.
You don't hear that word very often.
Yeah.
That's true. That's true. Yeah. Yeah, for sure. Yep. Okay.
Awesome. iNaturalist. Got it.
Yeah. Yeah. So how are we doing on time there, Dick?
But that's all the questions that we have.
Great.
So I think we're about ready to wrap it up. We sure
Okay.
appreciate everybody joining us, and
Yeah.
hope to see you at one of our other presentations.